Now, the way a limited partnership works is you've got the general partner at the top, which is formed of all the partners together. What they do then is they incorporate a corporation, and the corporation is the one that's going to manage. So the general partnership is like an empty box at the top where all the the partners get together, and they delegate all their tasks to a company that is responsible for managing a project. So that way you've got a legal separation, which makes it so that you're not responsible for as much for the acts that are carried out by the general partner. You have a bit of a distance, and as an Indian, you can still continue to benefit from the fiscal benefits of the Indian Act. There's so many disadvantages. At least we try to take care of one advantage that we do get. So that's one of the very complex forms that we generally recommend. It's a lot longer to create. However, it creates creates better benefits for the people afterwards. And on an accounting basis, it's also a bit more complicated to manage at first hand.
Then you have the undeclared partnership. The undeclared partnership is a big ensemble. It's pretty much every single partnership that doesn't fit into either general or limited. For people who are more at ease with French, the general partnership is called Société en nom collectif, and the limited partnership is called Société en commandite. The undeclared partnership, well, that's in there, that fits the joint venture that we're going to be talking about more extensively. One of the big advantage of the joint venture or undeclared partnership is that both of the companies or more that get together into it keeps their identity. They keep their legal structure. You're only going to be partner for a designated project or projects, but there's no intent to merge both companies together. It's going to be a temporary kind of thing. So you still have your debts, and the other partner still has his debt. You're putting together your assets just for this one project. One of the other advantages that is not to be neglected is that since it's undeclared, there's basically no rules in the Quebec Civil Code or in any other act that will limit what kind of partnership you can come up with. We have to understand that joint venture is coming from common law. Even though here in Quebec, we are submitted to le droit commun, le droit français, common law, it's basically way less laws and regulation than what we're used to seeing here. So the law of the party that gets together in that partnership is written in the partnership document. If you don't want to give dividend, then fine, write it. If you want to have a fiscal year that doesn't end December 31st, fine, write it. There's absolutely no limit as long as it's legal. If you're doing a partnership to import drug up north, you're going to have a problem. That's not because it's written that you're going to be allowed to do it. So it has to be legal, but it's basically the only limit.
Now, the big problem with the joint venture is that if you don't write it down and you don't have a very complete written document or a partnership agreement, is if you do have a problem at one point, what the judges will have a tendency to do is they'll try to stick it into one of the other partnerships. And then you'll be stuck with the very limited background and terms of the Civil Code of Quebec. So if you want to really define what your partnership is like, you absolutely need a complete legal document that is going to state out all the advantages, all your objectives, who is going to do what, how the tasks are divided, who's going to put what money in and what knowledge or what other attribute into the partnership, if you want to make sure that you won't have any other problems. Because as Pascal said, joint ventures come from common law. Common law is judge-made law. As the law evolves, people just add on to it the facts from one to another, and it doesn't follow the strict civil code example. It's just out there, and it adapts and changes as it moves along. So if you do want a limited short-term partnership, the joint venture would be the best way to go, but that would be on a project-to-project basis. If you're looking for a more long-term partnership, then probably the limited or the general partnership would be your ideal solution.
Now, we can theorize as much as we want, but we have prepared a section of the presentation that is going to cover, in fact, what happens when you do a joint venture and you go into project. We're going to review a bit of the law, and we're going to also review with you guys cases that were in front of judge as the Supreme Court on common problems that you see in joint venture and how the courts of law have interpreted it. So we also want to thank Mrs. Audrey-Anne Voyer, who helped us prepare that presentation, even though she's not up front with us, but she's going to be for the next one, so you might as well start learning right now.
Okay, the first aspect is the tender valid? Now, as you've probably heard over the last few days, and most of you already know, there are two contracts in a construction contract. The first contract is when you receive the bid, and you decide to submit a bid to the client that's offering to build a road, for example. So you're going to prepare all the documents that our previous conferencer was giving us, and then you're going to submit the bid. The second aspect is the contract itself. Once you submitted a bid, if it is accepted, you have no choice. You have to enter into a contract and carry out the work. So we usually call these contract A, the bid, and contract B, which is the construction contract itself. That's why our first point is that the tender is not an offer to contract. It's a promise that if your bid is accepted, that you'll be entering into the contract. So on your behalf, the person that's submitting the bid, you have to maintain it. You can't, once your bid is accepted, decide, oh no, that doesn't apply, it's too expensive. It was $1 million, but now it costs $1.3 million. It doesn't work that way. You wrote $1 million, that's what you're going to have to construct it for. The rules have to be respected. For the client, they need to make sure that there's equity and equality among the tenders. Good faith always applies. And tenders are irrevocable.
And on that, we have the Axor case. So the Axor case was heard by the Court of Appeal of Quebec on June 29, 2012. What happened in that case is that Axor made a joint venture with a construction company called REC, and they bid on a project that was the National Library of the City of Quebec. The project was evaluated to around $7 million, and Axor deposited the lowest bid, well, its consortium, at $9.8 million. The thing is, it was demonstrated in front of the court that Axor knew that it would cost more than that. They deposited a lower bid for the simple fact that they thought that it would force the Quebec National Library to talk with them, since they were the lowest bidder, and then they would be able to negotiate upper prices and extras. Well, what the Court of Appeal decided is that you have to act in good faith. It's always like that in all of the cases that we are reviewing. You cannot deposit a bid with the express intent of adding extras afterwards. So when it is demonstrated that a company did that for the sole purpose of having the possibility of negotiating with the person that submitted the tender alone, then it's considered bad faith, and Axor's lawsuit was rejected, and the judge told that the Quebec National Library acted correctly by refusing to talk to Axor, knowing that they had willingly lowered their bid to something that was impossible to realize.
Now, which tenders are eligible? The first step is you need to qualify. Now, to be able to qualify, statements that you provide in your bid have to be exact. You cannot make them bigger, you cannot exaggerate, put a fishing story in there or two. You have to have exact statements in your bids.
The BTF case is, an example of that. The BTF case could rank alongside your best fishing derby story, because that's exactly what they did. Their consortium, that was a joint venture, told La Société Immobilière, that was offering a $13 million contract, that they had a very good appraiser. According to them, that appraiser was the best you could find in the province of Quebec. The guy had 35 years of experience and had appraised some of the most complicated projects throughout all of the province. Well, figures out that that appraiser in question was an office worker. He had never appraised anything. He worked to help appraisers, but they boosted his CV a lot to be able to obtain the contract. Of course, you will understand that the Quebec Superior Court found out that lying in a bid on something that is as important as an appraiser would invalidate the tender, even though they were the lowest bidder. BTF was rejected.